I'm Gertie Rude, back again this Wednesday mood. Well, I'm back again and it's Wednesday. Aren't we happy? Because we've all made it to Wednesday. I'm just going to I've got a fan on, just switch it off. Yes, so we're here. Piers Morgan was right about Meghan Markle. New claims surfaces. What new claims? Royal aides reveal bullying claim before Meghan's Oprah. This is old news, we know all this, but let's jump in. Come on. It's Nana Rakir from GB News. I love her.
Meghan Markle's behaviour, some claimed, led to them seeking therapy after their experience working with her. And Vanity Fair published
I was going to say, I need bleeding therapy. I think we all do after 6 years of listening to this bleeding melt.
Scathing report on
what are you wearing?
God's sake. An article in January which brought to light a number of new bullying allegations, including claims that Meghan had treated ex-employees with mean girls behaviour.
Well, we know all this. Therapy. Sorry, we know all this. Two sources say a colleague with ties to archetypes took a leave of absence after working on 3 episodes. Oh my God. And they were so asinine, vanilla, weren't they? I wouldn't even say they were vanilla. I think vanilla's a lot more exciting than those. Each of them was tedium. On steroids. Several others described taking extended breaks from work to escape scrutiny, exiting their jobs, undergoing long-term therapy. Is this two cultures? Or is it... No, it's just Meghan, isn't it? The person who interacted professionally with us says, I think if Meghan acknowledged her own shortcomings or personal contributions to situations rather than saying she is trapped in a victim narrative, her perception... Well, no, her perception is exactly as it is. She knows exactly what she's doing, and the victim narrative is her raison d'etre. It's her shield, isn't it, getting by basically a mother. Yeah, they added with the soggy laugh of a pleb rendering judgment on the Duchess of Sussex. But who am I to criticise Meghan Markle? She's doing great. Well, I think you're being sarcastic, weren't you, darling? Because, if she's doing great, then I literally am a ballerina. I really am. I think I might be a prima donna, you know. Anytime soon you're going to see me dancing Swan Lake. Or maybe, knowing me, the Nutcracker Suite.
Which is ironic, coming from a couple who are supposed to be advocates of mental health. They appear to have left a trail of broken people behind them.
Well, we know this.
Remember that famous Piers Morgan walkout?
That was disgusting, because I remember seeing that myself for some reason, because I never watched... obviously it was on my iPad, but I never watched Good Morning Britain or anything, but for some reason, I think it must have come up on my feed. Yes, and I saw it. Because they had access to the woman that's his boss, that in other words, I think she might be the head of ITV, rather than just the head of Good Morning Britain. Oh yes, they don't muck about, they pulled strings. And she obviously phoned through to the studios and said that he was to retract his statement, when he said that he, personally him, Piers, doesn't believe that she had mental health condition or whatever, that made her so depressed she needed to get psychiatric help when she was a member of the royal family. He said he personally didn't believe it. The woman, I think her name might have been Caroline something, can't remember her surname, said he retracted and apologised, and he wouldn't. He just got up and walked out and said, that's me, I'm done. That was the end of that. So that started this whole thing between them. Because if we go back before this happened, just before she met Harry, she was hawking her ways round the London political and media elite. And she was round, I don't know what area it would have been of London. Anyway, like Soho set, that sort of people, yeah. I do know, but the word escapes me. I can't remember. It's an area just by Buckingham Palace. As you go down Buckingham Palace Gate Road towards Buckingham Palace, on your right, there's an area there. Somebody tell me what it is. I can't remember what it is. I should know. I've spent enough time there, but it escapes me. And she met him in a bar around that area. This is before she met Harry, or just before she got introduced to Barrington. And they got on like a house on fire, and she was basically trying to get her foot in with everybody that was anybody. And somebody had given her an intro to him, so they'd gone for a coffee or a cocktail or something. And then she ghosted him. So that kind of, obviously, because he is, by very dint of who he is, hugely egoed person, I'd say. And it bruised his ego badly, and he never quite got over it. So, and he did in fairness, he did have some experience of her when he'd watched the Oprah interview and then thought that's BS, because he knew her, he'd met her, he'd had dealings with her, and he formed the opinion that she was just talking a load of nonsense, and then spoke at it on live Good Morning Britain, and that was the end of his career. No, what is he on now? Is he on Talk TV? Anyway, he's got his own show as usual, hasn't he? He always bounces back. He's Teflon Piers.
Was actually on the show that day talking about the Oprah interview.
Yes.
And he said that he didn't believe a word that Meghan had said in that interview with Oprah.
That is his opinion.
Meghan then made claims of mental health. His comments sparked a record 58...
Yeah, but how do we know he hasn't got a mental health condition? How do we know he doesn't suffer from bouts of anxiety and depression, self-doubt and loathing? We don't really know that, do we? And maybe that was where it was coming from, this I don't believe her, because he did have some sort of... I mean, I am not flying a flag for Piers Morgan, but we're making a lot of assumptions, and so is the Marklet as usual, right? Because she is the only victim in the world, isn't she? And she is the only one that's allowed to voice her opinions, hold opinions, and pronounce upon them, you know.
1,000 complaints to Ofcom, that's the UK media regulator, which later rejected the complaints, however saying that limiting his views would be a chill...
I wonder who the 58,000 complaints were about Piers Morgan's criticism of the Duchess of Sussex. Who do we think that had just sort of garnered quite a lot of foothold on social media and were being paid? Because even I saw the tweets about them being paid back then. We're going right back to just after the Oprah interview. So is that, early 2020, so that's 5 years ago. I wonder who the 58,000 complaints were, because I don't know anybody salient that rang in and complained. Nobody cares. Most people I know don't watch this nonsense.
Restriction of free expression. Piers lost his job over that. That's the power that Meghan Markle wielded back then. Or,
well, it wasn't.
Remember the
She paid
time
for
when
it.
host Tom Bradbury, who was actually very good friends with William and Kate, asked Meghan how she was coping during their tour of southern Africa. And even though she was surrounded by pure poverty-stricken people, those who were far, far worse off than her.
Yeah, she was meeting with women that had been abused in the most atrocious and outrageous ways. And I think the community programme was about helping these women to be empowered to take care of themselves and their children without being traumatised by the males around them, kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's South Africa. And then she said all this crud. It's just so cringe. Anyway, I remember watching it, but I didn't really... See, I love a royal wedding, because if you're English, British, you know that every time there's a royal wedding, you get a day off work, don't you? And you usually get a bank holiday or something goes on, yeah? So, and it's an excuse for a party, and it's all exciting, and this, that, and the other. So I didn't really know anything about her. I knew nothing about her. I didn't really know anything about Kate, to be fair, not being a paper reader or TV news person. I'd heard who she was, and, you know, obviously we'd all heard of her, but I didn't know, like, about her dad and mum and family and all this old nonsense. I didn't even know she had a sister. No one cared. Well, most average people that are working, like, 40 hours a week plus, and have got what's called lives, you just go along with the flow. And again, you got a day off work. I still remember it. And all my friends and family came round, and we all took photographs. We watched the thing, what's it called, the wedding, this, that, and the other. We see all the weird hats that people turned up in, naming no names. And it's a day off. I remember the very, very first royal wedding I remember actually being aware of watching was Princess Anne. So I don't know, because I was only a small child. When did she get married? But we got a day off school. So from very earlier on, you kind of groomed in Britain that when the royals get married, or there's a jubilee, or there's a special royal day off work, party day. You know what I mean? In those days, the pubs used to only be open for a few hours during the day, during the actual day, and then again in the evening till like 10 o'clock. And whenever it was like a jubilee or a royal wedding, they'd stay open longer. And your parents were always in a good mood, and the neighbours would be round, and there was food, and it was fun. I can remember, like, I think it was the Jubilee 77, was that 25 years? Might have been. and the whole street had a party, and all the kids dressed up in fancy dress to do with royalty, this, that and the other. So yeah, obviously from my point of view, anybody that ever gets married, we're like, oh yeah, party time. I don't think I'll be around for when George gets married. So we're buggered now, we've had it now, haven't we? So yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a day off work, I was up at the crack of dawn watching it. It was beautiful sunny weather. A cynic might say that the weather had been somewhat contrived for the event, because it was a blisteringly hot, too hot summer. And obviously if you're going to get married, it was the 21st of May, wasn't it? Or 19th of May, something like that. It was a blistering hot day. It was absolutely gorgeous. There was no traffic. Everybody was indoors watching this wedding. It was great. And that's all that people spoke about. If you're in a queue in Tesco's, or you're in the doctor's, or you're in the whatever, you strike up a conversation. It was always, oh, you're going to watch the wedding? Or did you watch the wedding? Or did you like her dress? Didn't he look lovely? Did you see what the Queen looked like? That's the British people. It's either talking about the royals or the weather. So obviously when the weather or the royals do anything momentous, it's a sort of start a conversation breaker, isn't it, really? It is. Well, it is if you're a woman, or it is if you're me. Actually, to be fair, it's probably just me. So yeah, there's that to it. We thought she was fantastic. We didn't know all of this that was going on.
And had everything to feel sorry for themselves about. She could only feel sorry for herself.
I did think it
when
was odd.
asked whether she was okay, she replied, thanks, but nobody ever asks her.
Yeah, I remember actually seeing that on the news for some reason. I don't know whether they kept it's 24-hour revolving news, so whether they showed it, because I don't think I was on the computer when I saw it. I might have been, but it came up and I see it. And I remember watching it, and obviously, having been British all my entire life, I did find it kind of like odd. It seemed like out of sync with what we'd expect from royal personages. Usually, even with Sophie when she married Edward, she was caught in a couple of untoward situations, much like the Duchess of York, but it was never like discussed. It would be in the papers, but they would never comment on it, never. So it was almost like it hadn't really happened. So you know what I mean. But they were sort of flagellating themselves and bleeding their hearts all over the place for our delectation, weren't they? To pity them, it was kind of hard to pity them, if you know what I mean, when you consider what is going on in the world.
He's doing. So it seems sort of ironic that both her and Harry could be perpetrators of behaviour that would affect the mental health of those around them negatively.
Well,
people claiming that they need therapy after dealing with them.
Listen, it's a no-brainer that, because if you know anything about social media, on social media you can get slaughtered for having a contrary view about her. So, and that is contrived. Obviously there are some mavericks out there that are just lunatics and would just go into battle for anything because they just want everybody to listen to their opinion. But there was a vast swathe, almost cohorts of people seeded onto social media, which I know is a thing. Not by our security services, but I think they were paid by this crew to get on there and just make everybody's life. If you've got an opinion that she isn't likely to like, they've just got to ruin you. They've just got to wreck your life. They've just got to absolutely traumatise the hell out of you and your whole family. Yes. So there's that to it.
If it was only one person complaining about how they'd behave.
So it's really hard to believe ever. Like, I've never really bought any of the crap about we've got to all feel sorry for her mental health and how she feels. When I see all around me what she's done to other people, not herself personally, but the money and the power she wields has manifested against other people, it doesn't bear thinking about. So we already know that she's got the money to bully people on or pay people to bully people on social media, in my opinion. So I can quite imagine and quite believe that she would bully people around her in her immediate sphere. Everybody laughed at Paula M. And I mean, I loved her stuff about Queen Letizia of Spain, because if you think Meghan's bad, she's probably got an older sister somewhere, and I think it's Queen Letizia of Spain. And I loved her coverage of that, because no one else has covered it. If they do, they cover it in Spanish. And she sort of did it in English and Spanish, so we could kind of understand. And and she also did some coverage about a maid that used to, or might have not been a maid, it might have just been like a servant that was employed by the Sussexes at Monty Shit Show. And people sort of shouted her down and said, I don't believe she's true, I don't believe you've got that. But if you actually go back on what was reported by that servant, it does kind of fit like a jigsaw piece in all this that's coming out, doesn't it? It does, if you go back on it. I think it was last summer, or maybe last spring, probably late spring, early summer. And she did it, and then people were just shouting her down about it, so that was the end of that. But I maintain that it did have a ring of truth. It did have a ring of truth, because I know how people like with her sort of personality operate, and it did fit. It really did.
I get it.
It's my opinion.
But it's not just one person. This level of people who have taken offence at how they've been treated by the couple is unprecedented. The Sussexes are...
She's going around stealing people's fences now? Well, I'll be blowed. What a little madam. Oh, cheek.
Yeah, also, to have a problem with staff retention.
Give it back.
They don't seem to be able to hang on to anyone. Back in September last year, the Hollywood Reporter included claims about the Duchess that were extremely critical.
Right.
One in particular where an ex-employee has said that Meghan was a dictator in high heels.
Yes, well, she is.
The article actually read,
she's a dictator.
Why did they all leave? What explains the churn? And in quotes, everyone's terrified of Meghan. A source close to the couple claimed, she belittles people. She doesn't take advice. They're both poor decision makers. They change their minds frequently. Harry is a very, very charming person, no airs at all, but he's very much an enabler, and she's just terrible.
Right, stop there, because I totally believe all of that. That does fit with the sort of personality type that we all know already that we're dealing with. It's got a bit weird there. Yeah, so yes, totally believe all of that. And he probably isn't well, basically he's cucked, isn't he? Let's have it right. I'm being polite, but in my opinion, she sort of cuckolds him, doesn't she? So that's it, really.
Have been the catalyst for the hastening of the couple's descent down the Hollywood hills. And if reports are to be believed, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were also distressed by the Vanity Fair piece and are keeping a low profile.
Well, no, I don't think the Duke was. I think the Duke was probably distressed because he had his bleeding ears burned by her. Did you hear what they said about me, Harry? I mean, I'm like a goddess. I'm like Mother Bleeding Teresa. Oh my God, everybody's picking on me. I'm a victim. No one asks me how I feel. And all that. I'm authentic. It's just nonsense. And I think I've heard an interview where he actually does blame himself because she's gaslit him into believing that it's his fault. That her bad publicity is his fault. So every time they're at an event, she was seen to push him out the way. That was his fault. When they had, was it Vanity Fair magazine or Vogue, when she's in front and he's behind, that was his fault. You see, he made himself go behind and sort of peer over her shoulder like he was a kid. Do you get me? Yeah, all those, what was it, the lifestyle, can't think what it was, those stupid podcasts. Anyway, that nonsense. We thought we were going to get Harry because I think Netflix did actually sign on, or Spotify signed on, believing it was going to be both of them. But she made sure it's just her. And that was his fault too. So he's probably in that mindset. Even Diana, bless her, said that he wasn't the brightest button. So yeah, he probably just needs to be deprogrammed by some expert psychologists and behaviour people, analysts, those people.
At GB News, we believe in the power of free speech.
Right.
We're not afraid to ask the tough questions, challenge the status quo, and give you a...
We've got an advert there, I don't know what that's for. Right, let's get back. Well, I don't know why we've gone from that to Trump. I was enjoying that. About Piers Morgan, is it? It might be.
Yep. Donald Trump.
Oh, she's gone off. No, what it is, she's done that and she's gone off, so she's still got the same tagline. So I think we've covered the event, haven't we? The Marklet is banged to rights for being a bully, and all the signs are there. I mean, she publishes most of them. And if people say about their experiences, that does marry up to the behaviour that we've seen and been treated to in the public eye under her scrutiny. I mean, she allows these photographs to be taken when she poses for Vogue magazine or Hello magazine or Goodbye magazine or something, and she's just giving it all the large, hasn't she? I mean, what was that stupid one where she was going to help 40 women or something or other during the lockdown because it was her 58th birthday, something like that, no one believed or cared about, and you got a glimpse of Barry out the window juggling balls. What the flip? Who even does that? I mean, at the time, that is her idea. Oh, isn't that cute and funny? No, it's ridiculous. You make yourself look ridiculous and you make him look even more bleeding ridiculous than you, if that's possible. Oh, no, actually, scrub that, it's not. Anyway, I'm going to say goodnight, wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. You know I love you all individually, and I'll be back soon. Please, can you like and subscribe? And make sure you leave a comment or something, because, as you all know, my channel is being attacked by the bleeding Sketses. So, anyway, bye-bye for now. Bye.